You can't be serious. The tush push is why Josh Allen is not as good as Jalen Hurts.
No. I'm just giving an example. Come on,
Lewis. I'm not.
What do you mean? You just said he couldn't get a yard. You don't think Josh Allen? Josh Allen has maybe played better than any quarterback in the league the last 3 years in the playoffs. It happened. The countdown is on, and then sure enough, back-to-back calls. Jalen Hurts is better than Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, and I said I knew it.
Yeah, not true.
People just can't be rational. Jalen Hurts is better than Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. I'm not sure in which world, but I knew it. I knew it was coming.
I do think Meller and Tyler have to give it up, though, because those two talk about Jalen Hurts, and I was more on their side pre-Super Bowl. It's just once that game happened, and he's been to 2, and he played his ass off in both, and now he's won 1. Do we really have to fill the airtime with, well, Brock Purdy could have done it, Jared Goff could have done it? They haven't done it. He's done it. Can we just say Jalen Hurts is elite now? We don't have to go crazy and say he's better than everybody who doesn't have a ring, including Burrow and Mahomes, or Burrow and Allen and Lamar.
I mean,
but we can say he's an elite quarterback.
He's in that. He is certainly near the top of the list of that next group after the players that are. To me, elite is maybe a little bit of a reach still, because I think elite is reserved for Mahomes, Lamar, Burrow, and Allen. I don't think there's another elite quarterback in the league. I think those players are elite. I don't think you can have 8 elite guys. There's only 32 of them. You can't have over a third of them be elite. So I don't think he's elite. This is like a cap argument now. And maybe we're splitting hairs and we're talking semantics, but I guess maybe I view that term a little differently. He certainly is not better than Lamar Jackson. He is not better than Josh Allen. He is not better than Joe Burrow. And you say, if we're just going to count, listen, it's like doing power rankings and then just looking at the standings. You can count, and I guess that's fine, or you could have some nuanced discussion and really watch and really analyze and really have a thought about what makes quarterback play elite or next level or what is great or what you'd want for your team through 17 games, 18 weeks, year in and year out. And if you think that's Jalen Hurts over those other guys, okay. I'm not sure what you're watching, but okay. Now, I don't agree with Meller and Tyler's assessment that you could maybe find 12 guys that are better or 12 guys to do exactly what he did in Philly's system. I wouldn't go that far either. I don't think I could find 12 guys that I'd rather have over Jalen Hurts. There's no way I could find 12 guys. I could find probably 6.
I think 6 or 7 is probably the number.
Yeah, I agree with you. I could probably find 6.
I think Goff could have replicated in that system. Not the rushing upside, but I think he's better from the pocket by a little bit. So in that offensive line, with that offense, I think he could have done it. Purdy, I don't know, because Purdy's had 9 All-Pros and couldn't get it done.
We're going to have the Purdy conversation in a few minutes.
Goff had his meltdown against Washington, though. Hurts didn't have
great.
that.
Yeah, so maybe not. Maybe it's just Mahomes and Allen and Burrow and Lamar.
I think we could have some sort of discussion about a few other guys.
Tyler was telling me yesterday that Tua could have done what Jalen Hurts did with the Eagles, and I was like, come on.
No. That I disagree with.
I like Tua more than most people, I think, but I don't think that's true.
Unless his coach was too mean to him.
All right, there we go. Take a shot at Tua now, too. All right, a couple shots across the bow at Tua. There you go. No, I don't agree on Tua. I'll buy anybody's C.J. Stroud stock. I know it wasn't a great year this year. I'll buy anybody's C.J. Stroud stock. And I think when you watch them play, you see some processing / physical stuff with the arm that I'd much rather have every day of the week. Every day of the week. And so, not everybody's going to agree with me on that. That's fine. I think you could at least entertain some level of discussion about it. I've been a huge Justin Herbert fan. I'm not even sure I'd put Justin Herbert over him at this point, though. Maybe just because Jalen has, like you said, he has done it now.
Yeah.
A little bit more. And Herbert hasn't won a playoff game.
I think
from the skill standpoint, I love the things that Herbert is, but there's something missing there that's kind of held that offense and that team back a little bit with my guy Herbert. So
I get it with Stroud. I would not play Stroud ahead of Hurts right now.
Okay.
I wouldn't. I can't.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't either, but I think I could I'd still buy all the C.J. Stroud stock that anybody wants to sell.
I would too. Going forward, they had a horrible offensive line that was coached horribly.
Horrible.
And if you think the Bears' offensive line was among the worst in football this year, and I'm not saying it wasn't, go watch Houston tape.
Terrible.
It'll blow your mind.
Yeah.
They were awful. I get buying the stock, but he also had moments of like, what the F are you doing?
I agree. It was a step back of a year in general, but there's still so many things that you can see where I'd still bank on a lot of the upside and some of the stuff we saw from the first year.
I know that the Charger game ended up lopsided, the Texans-Chargers playoff game, but that first half, there were like 3-4 plays.
I know.
Stroud threw the ball, and I'm like, what are you looking at?
I know.
What are you seeing that's leading that to be your decision?
I think some of it just became like forced desperation maybe at times. I don't know. We'll see if he can get back and look more and, get back on the trajectory that we saw more through that first year. I also don't think it's any great insult to Jalen Hurts to say, okay, so, maybe he's not a leader. Maybe he's not one of the 5 or 6 best quarterbacks in the league, but he's certainly in the conversation for somewhere right around 7 or 8. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a top 10 quarterback. He has performed well in the Super Bowls, too. I'll give him credit. In this last week, he made some big-time throws. They also operated like in a script that is good for them and comfortable for him, where he didn't have to throw the ball a ton. I'll give him credit. The throws he did make, some of them were big-time money throws, but he didn't have to throw the ball a ton. They played with a lead. I talked about this with Jurko last week a little bit. They're like, think of any great team you throughout the years. If you're a baseball fan, you go back to like the early 2000s, late 2000s, before the teens, Houston Astros teams that had that unbelievable bullpen, or some of the Mets teams from yesteryear, where after the 6th inning, the game was over. That's the Eagles. The Eagles get a lead, game's over. They're just, when they operate in that script, and he can operate in that script, and they can keep running the ball, whether they're having success or not doesn't matter. The big touchdown to Devontae Smith was on play action. Did it matter that they were running the ball for a 2.3 yard per average clip? No, of course it didn't. But they were able to stay on their script. They were able to run the ball. They were able to hit a big play action play down the field and score the touchdown that, for all intents and purposes, really did end it. That was the one I think that made it 34-0. So when he can operate in that world with that offensive line where they're on script, they're not behind the sticks, he's going to be good. And to your point, I think you could probably find a good handful, maybe a half dozen of other quarterbacks that you could put in that moment, in that system, that would be good and that would thrive. It's not bashing Jalen Hurts. It's just an acknowledgement of the way the game went, the way he plays, the way the Eagles generally play. When they get a lead, they're almost impossible to beat and it's mostly a testament to the roster they have.
And really the way their season went, because Kellen Moore, if he had his way, Jalen Hurts would have never thrown more than 20 passes in a game. Like, they were just going to live off their offensive line and their running game, and Saquon.
What do you think that tells people? What should that tell people?
It should tell people that to an extent he's limited. But there is the question also, is it we don't trust Jalen Hurts to do it, he's incapable of it, or we don't need him to do it because we're so well built, we can do all of these other things? Because in the Super Bowl, when they couldn't run the football, it was Jalen Hurts that came through for them. So I think both sides can be true. The one thing I can comfortably and confidently say, he is incapable of doing what Josh Allen did in Buffalo this season, which is provide 80% of your offense on a team people thought had fallen apart and lost all of its meaningful, talented players on the offensive side, and still win 13 games.
There's no question. People can't really believe that he's better than Josh Allen because of what you just said. There's no chance. It's not knocking Jalen Hurts. And the other thing I like about him is and this has always been a very hard thing to quantify, is the whole idea about a person being clutch. And Bill James used to always say that he would argue with anybody about the idea that a player could be clutch until he went to work for the Red Sox and watch David Ortiz. And Bill James was like, you know what? Maybe it does exist. I don't know how to quantify it. We'll never be able to fully quantify it. But I can also watch something and say, David Ortiz is clutch. Kyle Schwarber's clutch. Jalen Hurts seems to have that clutch gene.
Bryce
Harper's clutch. Like some guys can just do it. There's got to be some DNA thing that exists within some people or some mindset that allows them to perform at that level. And I'm not so sure that everybody does have it. Again, how you quantify that is very hard to do. And Bill James's point was always that through data, it's hard because you're talking about very small sets of relevant data.
Yeah.
And there's high variance. But he, famously said after many runs through the postseason with David Ortiz, he was like, you know what? Maybe it does exist. That's for like an evolutionary psychologist or biologist to figure out, I guess, and not a mathematician who's looking at baseball statistics. But I can look at Jalen Hurts and go, I wouldn't be afraid. And with that guy as my quarterback in a big moment, he's not going to cower. That I'll give him credit for.
Guys like you and I, like we're both numbers people. We're both data people. We appreciate that side of it. I think at some point we just have to trust our eyes. And I think when I watch Jalen Hurts, his calmness is maybe his best attribute.
Yeah.
Twice on the biggest stage, he seemed completely unbothered by how bright the lights are, the magnitude of the moment, and he has played his best football in those moments. That does matter to me.
Yeah.
And I also think going back to the conversation about, okay, in a perfect world, they would not ask Jalen Hurts to do very much. There is another side of that coin, too, of it's tough probably in this league for a quarterback to accept my role in my offense is going to be limited, and that's not an issue with him. I think that plays a part as well.
Yeah. So well said. All right, let's we'll grab a couple calls here real quick because we're going to do Immaculate Carm.
Can you take line 2? Because that's just not true.
Line 2? I was going to go to line 1. Hold on,
line
Daryl.
2, some on line 2 is making me angry. It's just not true.
Lewis in Homewood. Okay, Lewis, go ahead.
Hey, what's going on? How you guys doing?
Good.
You said somebody in line 2 is making you angry?
Angry is not the right word. It's just that what's. Why don't you tell us what your point is? Because the way it's written on the screen, I don't agree with, and I don't think it's true.
Okay, I just want to say when it comes to the playoffs, Jalen Hurts is a far superior quarterback to Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson.
Yeah,
the reason why.
That's the part that's not true. Go ahead.
Okay, Lamar Jackson is horrible in the postseason. He doesn't get it done. We know that. He always fails in the postseason. Josh Allen couldn't get a yard against Kansas City. You put Jalen Hurts in that situation with the tush push, he will get that yard. So, and we've seen him be superior than Mahomes in 2 Super Bowls.
You can't be serious, Lewis. You can't be serious, Lewis. You can't be serious. The tush push is why Josh Allen is not as good as Jalen Hurts.
No. I'm just giving an example. Come on,
Lewis. I'm not.
What do you mean? You just said he couldn't get a yard. You don't think Josh Allen has maybe played better than any quarterback in the league the last 3 years in the playoffs? Like, seriously, have you watched the games? I mean,
factually, he has.
Yeah, like he's been better than probably any quarterback in football.
When Josh Allen needs to come up big, he didn't.
Because he can't get a yard in the tush push?
But, Lewis,
you can't be serious.
I'm just giving an example. That's all. I'm not using that as my main point. Go
Lewis, can I give you some numbers? Because, and I might inaccurately cite them. I apologize. It's been a couple weeks since we talked about this.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that's cool.
The Lamar thing, I'm not going to fight you. I am the little game Lamar guy. There is something about when you get to the divisional round. He just, I'm not going to say sucks, but, he becomes a turnover merchant a little bit.
He does.
The Josh Allen thing, for your awareness, he's number 1 all time in playoff passing yards per game. Number 1 all time in playoff completion percentage per game. Number 1 all time in playoff EPA in these games. Number 1 all time in playoff touchdown to interception ratio. He is phenomenal.
He's been the best quarterback in the league the last 3 years in the playoffs.
It's not his fault that his defense has nobody on the line that's a difference maker, except for who am I trying to think of?
Dawkins. Deion Dawkins.
No,
his defensive
line.
Oh, defensive line. Who Who? I mean,
Oliver?
Oliver
Is
or
he the
Rousseau?
one?
Or I mean,
Like
Von Miller's a shell of his former
They've
self.
gotten the corpse of Von Miller. Ed
Oliver's fine.
He's not Chris Jones. He's not Jalen Carter.
I would say Rousseau is just sort of fine as well.
Is Matt Milano their best defensive player at the least valuable position on the defense?
I would say, I don't know. I mean,
do they have a game-breaking corner? No, they haven't had one since Trey White left. And even he wasn't like a CB1.
They don't have their biggest problem is that they don't have a pass rusher that they could, really rely on. Who did you say, Charlie?
Christian Benford, their corner. That was the only other one I could think of. But
Benford's probably their best.
And even for that, it's more just he's so clearly exceeded expectations. But it's like, what does that actually mean?
But they don't have a defensive line difference maker.
They don't have a Quinyon Mitchell. They don't have a Jalen Carter. No. They don't have a Josh Sweat. They don't have any of that. No. And their offensive line, it's Deion Dawkins and a bunch of guys.
Yeah, it's mostly Dawkins. And I'd say, you've got your average probably I'm trying to go through all their guys in the top of my head.
Spencer Brown took a big step on the right side.
A little bit.
But that's the nuance of the conversation, because you watch the Eagles and you have to bring up the fact that they have multiple Hall of Famers on their offensive line. They likely have multiple Hall of Famers on their defensive line.
It's the best roster in football. Them or the Lions, probably. Jurko said, don't forget about the Lions. And he's right. I think it's probably the best roster in the league, top to bottom.
You'd rather have the Eagles.
That's why they went 16-1.
You'd rather have the Eagles pass rush, even with a healthy Hutchinson, than Detroit's, just because it's so overwhelming.
Not probably, definitely.
And the roster will look different. They can't keep everybody. I get it, but they've got the best roster in the league.
How many defensive lines in history would you take over this Eagles defensive line?
I have to think about that.
That's
the Steelers,
hyperbolic potentially,
70 Steelers.
It's a legitimate question. 85 Bears.
85 Bears. 70 Steelers for sure. 85 Bears for sure. Now I got to go through them now. Jeez, you're putting me on the spot.
2000 Ravens, maybe?
The Broncos with Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware was
a good one.
What about the 90s Washington team?
Yeah, that was good too.
Was that 95?
No, before that, because it was like
91.
It was more like
prime 91.
Wilbur Marshall was part of that pass rushing core, and Dexter Manley. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. That's an interesting one.
Probably not Giants.
Some of the Vikings lines, like in the 70s,
the Purple
early
People
80s.
Eater
yeah.
teams. The point is,
Jets from the early 80s, maybe.
There can't be more than 15 teams all time.
Probably
I'd
not.
rather have their D line than this Eagles team.
Probably not. Just going off the top of my head.
They need a nickname.
Yeah, they do.
Orange Crush, New York Sack Exchange.
Yeah.
They need a nickname.
Purple People Eaters, Steel Curtain. They do need a cool nickname. The problem is guys stayed together more back then. With free agency, it's hard.
They're going to
lose Josh Sweat.
They're going to lose Sweat. They might lose Milton Williams.
Milton Williams, yeah.
Like, this line looked different than it did 2 years ago in their Super Bowl. So it's hard to make names for them now because they leave so often. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Free agency is good for players. It's good for the league. But, like, back then, you had a group of guys that would be together for 7 years so you could name them. It's a little harder to do now because they might lose two of those guys in free agency in Sweat and Milton